welcome back. I hope that everybody enjoyed their break or their extra conversational time with Lori Weiner. Thanks for being flexible about everything. I have to say that this is one of the ideas for a program that we developed a year and a half ago, because it was so astonishing to have the news that that actual biotech and pharmaceutical companies were launching and involved in doing work that were putting children first, that were either exclusively for children or putting drug development for children before their other programs. And so Gavin, over a year ago, agreed to moderate this session, and he's going to do a fine job. Gavin, I've known for a very long time. He's the president and co-founder with Wendy of the Evan Foundation, which has been established now, I think, a decade, Gavin, if I remember correctly, in honor of Evan, who had neuroblastoma. And Gavin and Wendy's work is just amazing. They do family support in the form of their treats and treasures carts, which they're very dutiful about at the hospitals where they serve. And they also fund young investigators and are just generally there for the community. And he is the perfect person to moderate this panel, because he is knowledgeable and really sees how all the pieces of the picture fit together. So Gavin, thank you for agreeing to moderate. Panelists, we're very excited to have you, and I'll turn the show over to Gavin.
Well, Vicki, thank you very much. Happy Friday, everybody. It's great to be with you. Vicki, let me start with a big thank you to you for all your tremendous work and service to CAC2. I think we all applaud that, and wouldn't be where we are as a community today without you and your leadership. So thank you for that. And gosh, Lori Weiner is a tough act to follow, and all the great work that she does. But I think we've got a really exciting panel lined up for this afternoon. And our title is the Pediatric Oncology Drug Development Experience through the lens of firms that are putting kids first. And as Vicki said, I'm Gavin Lindberg, and it's just so exciting to be able to moderate this session. I'll mention to you that I'm broadcasting live from my home here in Germantown, Maryland. And just a heads up, a little public service announcement. If you happen to hear some barking during the session, don't be alarmed, it's not me. It's my 21-pound dog, who, I don't know, always seems to get excited when I get on childhood cancer video calls. So you may hear Izzo chime in here as we go along. The good news on my end is I don't have any slides. I'm just going to talk to you and do my best to moderate this session. And I think, get out of the way mostly and give us an opportunity to hear from our experts. But let me just add really quickly to the nice introduction that Vicki gave me. I am the angel parent of a child lost to cancer. My son, Evan, was my only child, and he passed away in 2010 at the age of 7 from neuroblastoma. And he was diagnosed at the age of 3, and over the course of 4 very long years, Evan and my wife, Wendy, who's on the call today, and I shuttled between our home hospital here, Children's National in Washington, D.C., Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York, and the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, looking for hope. And we also found ourselves at a 4th hospital in Florida over one spring break when Evan had to undergo a very dire emergency brain surgery. And, those traumatic 4 years always remind me of the Winston Churchill quote that when you're going through hell, keep going. And that's what we did. We kept going. We kept going until we were out of options and treatment failed our son. So in the aftermath of Evan's fight, Wendy and I decided very quickly that we were going to dedicate the rest of our lives to trying to make a difference in the lives of children like Evan. And to do that, we established the Evan Foundation, and Vicki touched on our work. Thank you, Vicki. We did this not long after Evan passed, and we're celebrating our 10th anniversary this year. And we've been a proud CAC2 member since the inception of CAC2. And, speaking of CAC2, let me just take a quick second here. I want to thank everyone involved in organizing what has been just a terrific annual meeting. I know a lot of hard work goes into doing this, a lot of hard work behind the scenes to make sure that things are seamless and go smoothly. So thank you to the team who did that. And specifically for this session, I want to give a special shout out to my friend Carla Fluke, who was instrumental in helping organize this panel. So thank you very much, Carla. And I'll finally say about CAC2, I don't know about the rest of you, but I always come away just incredibly inspired by a CAC2 meeting. The children, the parents, the advocates in our community are just the bravest, most courageous people that I know. And the work that everybody is doing is just remarkable in the face of great challenge and great tragedy. So I want to thank everyone for that as well. Okay, the topic of pediatric cancer drug development obviously is very important to all of us. As a community, we all share the same goal of fostering new, less toxic and effective therapies for kids with cancer, and hopefully one day cures for tumors that currently are incurable. And we are very, very fortunate today to have three distinguished leaders in this effort on our panel. They're representing Day One Biopharmaceuticals, OncoHeroes Biosciences, and Y-mAbs Therapeutics. And I want to thank each of them for their dedication to our kids and for bringing their expertise to this discussion today. And, over the past decade, I have participated in a number of these drug development panels, had the privilege of moderating some of them with CAC2. And, we've seen some really exciting progress in this space. And our patient community, this CAC2 community, has played a significant role in that progress. And, while we all should be very proud of that work and the role that we've played, I think we all know that we need to remain focused on the fact that more needs to be done, right? We all know that time is precious, particularly for children and families and young adults who are waiting on that next treatment breakthrough. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on in the program. So let me just say at the outset here that we're going to focus the discussion on the opportunities and challenges in the childhood cancer drug development space writ large. We are not going to be talking about specific products in the portfolios of the companies who are participating on the panel. So just wanted to mention that. And if you would just please keep that in mind as we transition into the Q&A section of the agenda. And speaking of the agenda, let me just tell you, we're going to spend the next hour or so really in three sections. First off, I'm going to ask our panelists here in just a second to take a couple of minutes to introduce themselves and their companies. Then we're going to have a roundtable discussion that addresses what I hope are some of the key issues that are of interest to this group. And then finally, we're going to open the floor up to questions. And we're going to take as many questions as we can from the audience. And of course, you can submit those in the chat, and we'll do our best to get to as many as we can before the hour is up. So let me stop talking and transition into introductions for the panel. And I'm going to start with ladies first. So Anna, if I could turn to you first for an introduction, please. Thank you.
Sure. Hello, everyone, and thank you, Gavin, and organizers of CAC2 meeting for inviting me to this incredible panel of individuals. I just want to say that even the work for Y-mAbs, everything I say today is my personal opinion. Just want to make sure you understand that. From a personal touch, I've spent about 22 years in oncology, including pediatric oncology and adult oncology. And I've been in pharmaceutical industry for over 16 years now, launching products in cancer treatment and different indications. I joined Y-mAbs in 2019, 4 years after the company was formed. And just like the OncoHeroes and Day One, Y-mAbs has a personal story behind it. And that's what drove me to the company. Y-mAbs is an incredible company. We have a very fun group of individuals, bright, talented, energetic, with incredible leadership at the head of the company. And our mission is to become the world leader in developing investigational antibody-based cancer products that address unmet medical need in pediatric oncology. And we also will be branching into adult oncology, sort of in reverse, comparing to some other companies that go into adult and then in pediatrics. But we are committed to developing products in pediatric cancer and commercializing those products. So with that, back to you, Gavin.
Yeah, thank you very much, Anna. We look forward to your expertise throughout the hour here. You know, next up, we really are fortunate to have an international flavor to our panel. Cesare is in Italy, Milan, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and I think it is, what is it, probably 8 o'clock there. So he's well into his Friday evening and has taken the time to be with us. So Cesare, can we turn to you for an introduction?
Absolutely. Thanks, Gavin. It's almost dinner time here, almost. Usually we have dinner later. So it's really great to be here today. Okay, I'm a PhD scientist by training. I've been working in drug discovery and development more than 20 years. I'm a molecular cell biologist by training. And I've been working as a drug discovery scientist in a pharma company before transitioning to business development positions, across the industry. But again, more importantly, I'm also a parent. Unfortunately, I lost my first child to cancer in 2006, my first daughter at the age of 4. And I could echo Gavin's words, word by word, because I could, I felt exactly the same. And that's, for me, the reason to be in this space. I really wanted to use my drug discovery, my drug development expertise to make an impact and change the landscape for children with cancer. I set up a foundation in London a few years ago. That's when I became part of the CAC2 network. So I've been part of this organization for several years. I think more than 6 years now. And a few years ago, we decided to scale up and basically set up a biotech company together with my co-founder Ricardo Garcia. So we set up OncoHeroes Biosciences. We're a biotech company. Really, we would like to become a leading biotech in the field of pediatric oncology for the development of drugs specifically for children with cancer. We think that we can build a sustainable model just focusing on kids with cancer. And I'm very excited to be here today.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Given that it's Italy, it's Friday night and it's dinner time, if you have a glass of red wine while we're doing this, I don't think anyone is going to complain. So that's
a good idea. I'll be back.
All right. All right. Last but not least, Sam is in the other direction from Cesar in terms of geography. He's out on the West Coast, and really enjoyed getting to know Sam a little bit better here over the last few weeks as we prepared for this. So Sam, can you give us an introduction, please?
Sure, thanks. And it's great to see everybody virtually here. It's been a couple or 3 years since my last CAC2 meeting when you guys were all in Seattle, and I'm very pleased to be a participant in the panel today. I'm Sam Blackman. I'm co-founder, chief medical officer of Day One Biopharmaceuticals. I'm a physician scientist, actually a pediatric hematologist and neuro-oncologist by training, and I've been doing cancer drug development for the past 13 or 14 years in my career. Increasingly focused on pediatric oncology drug development, both in big pharma and in biotech companies. And all along the way have been deeply involved in the pediatric oncology advocacy community, either through Cure Search or Accelerate or organizations like CAC2, and sharing in the frustrations of watching drugs where there's been a clear preclinical or clinical data indicating certain therapeutics could or should be developed in pediatric patients, essentially be deprioritized because they've not found a path forward in adult indications. And about 3 years or so ago, I met my co-founder of Day One, Julie Grant. She and I, inspired by work from Accelerate, really believe that there is a path forward for creating a bespoke biotech company that would initiate programs based on biological insights from pediatric cancer, drive those programs to approval, and expand the value of those programs by developing them for patients really of all ages. And we've been doing that work over the past 3 years, have grown the company now to over 30 people, a number of whom are on this call. And I've been very proud to be supportive of CAC2 in the annual meeting this year. and look forward to sharing the lessons that we've learned doing our work since 2018.
That's great, Sam. Thank you, and thanks to your colleagues who are with us as well. Sam, I'm gonna stick with you. I'm gonna throw the first question out there, and maybe you can pick up with the first response, because I think it's a nice segue to the comments that you had. We tried to pick a wide-ranging question that touches on a number of, I think, questions that folks in our community have. And that question is, what are the main challenges to entering, sustaining, and growing a pediatric oncology drug development program? And I know there's a lot there, but we want to learn and hear from the experts. So Sam, can you start, and maybe we can just go around the panel and have that first discussion?
Yeah, absolutely, and thanks for the question. I hate to say that it's money, but it is in many instances a question of resourcing. There are to create and sustain a pediatric cancer drug development program is incredibly labor intensive. All drug development is incredibly labor and resource intensive, and that it doesn't matter if you're starting from a molecule that's never been in humans before, or if you're inheriting a program that's already been in 2 or 3 or 4 or 500 patients. It takes a lot of expertise and a lot of financial resource in order to drive a program forward. And I think, one of the things I certainly didn't appreciate when I was on the clinician side of my career was exactly how big the drug development machine is. And it's beyond things like, basic science research or translational research and manufacturing. But the regulatory, the pharmacovigilance, the clinical development expertise, medical affairs, commercialization, all of the things necessary to actually take a molecule and turn it into a product that would then be, approved by global regulatory authorities and made commercially available to patients around the world. It's an enormous undertaking. To get the money to do that, the investors who are going to back your program are going to want to see a return for their investment. And I think the lesson that we've learned at Day One over the past 3 years is really how to be creative, starting with a molecule, starting with an observation of a potential path for using that molecule in pediatric patients, how to create value. And if it's at all possible to do it where you're only focused on pediatric diseases, we would certainly love to be able to do that. The solution that we found, at least for the first couple of programs that we've been licensed, is that we need to think about creating value by developing our drugs for pediatric patients. And again, our mission is to do that first and fast, but then we have to be ambidextrous, and we have to think about, can we create value by developing those programs also for adult patients, because frankly, there are just far more adult cancer patients than there are pediatric cancer patients. So, that has shaped how we look at the molecules that we aim to in-license or develop. And for right now, that is the forcing function for how we make decisions is, because of the system that we work in, it has to be a value-based system. So that is a big challenge, and I like to think that we've managed to prove that it's doable, that it's solvable. You can create value by putting children first, and we hope to do that going forward.
Absolutely. Can I just follow up on that? Can you give us a sense of the time frame from when you and your colleagues first had this vision for Day One and where we are today? What does that look like when you look at it linearly?
Well, so I met Julie Grant about 3 years ago in February of 2018, and we had the idea about this, and we talked to a number of people, both the Accelerate Working Group 4, Raphael Rousseau and Delphine Heenan and Patricia Blanc and Gio Basal, Andy Pearson. And then we also talked to Peter Adamson and Susan Weiner. And we really ideated this over the course of a number of months in 2018. We went to Canaan Partners, was the venture capital firm that Julie works at, and they gave us some seed capital in October of 2018. So we really incorporated the company as soon as we got through that, so November of 2018. And everything that we've done since then, identifying the molecule, raising our Series A, our Series B, building the team, getting our trials initiated, going public. We've managed to do all that in the space of 2.5 years. It's been a very long 2.5 years, and we were able to do it very, very quickly. I think we were beneficiaries of a huge amount of capital flooding into the biotech sector, and a little bit of right place, right time, but most importantly, right team, right product. I think has really been made it possible for us to go and build the capital, build the team to do what we're setting out to do.
I imagine there were a lot of sleep deprived nights in those 2.5 years. I mean, that's just breakneck speed to go from, a vision to a public company. So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Cesare or Anna, do you want to chime in on this issue of challenges to getting into the space and growing your portfolio and being sustainable and viable?
Sure, and I completely agree with Sam that funding and resources are critical, and that ties into the regulatory framework, right? The regulations are more complex and more overwhelming, specifically in pediatric cancer treatment. And as we talk through the challenges and opportunities, perhaps the opportunities to simplify the regulatory framework. I mean, complexity and challenges of running the clinical trials globally in pediatrics, is an incredibly heavy in resource utilization and funding, and specifically in rare pediatric cancers, right? And then, as Sam mentioned before, it's not just running the clinical trials, getting through the development process, but it's actually bringing it to the patients through commercialization. So uncertainties regarding approval and reimbursement, is also quite challenging from pediatric cancer development, and getting that support from venture capital when they have to buy into the approval process and reimbursement in the future, bringing funding into the company. So a little bit different perspective as I'm working in medical affairs.
Yeah, thank you. And could you maybe just say a word about the patient partnership? I mean, I know that the neuroblastoma patient community has been right there with your company, I think since day one, in a really important partnership to bring new products to kids. So that's unique, and I think it's of interest to to the audience. So any thoughts on that piece?
Yeah, absolutely. SKC, Solving Kids Cancer, and CNCF, the Foundation for Neuroblastoma Cancer. So Childhood Foundation for Neuroblastoma Cancer, has been pretty incredible in partnering with Y-Mabs Pharmaceuticals. I mean, I can't speak enough for the leadership of those companies, for those foundations, to understand what are the challenges we're facing, what are the challenges the parents are facing and the kids, and kind of finding the solution of bringing the two together. And as we talk through this session, it's one of the approaches that I think will help in the future for pediatric cancer development, bringing the advocacy, the academic centers, and the pharmaceutical company together to get the product to the children, not just in the US, since we are from the US perspective, but worldwide.
And Cesare, I know your model in terms of partnerships is, doing very, very well. I see updates all the time about new partners that you have. So maybe this is a good place for you to pick up on Anna's comments, and would welcome any other thoughts you have on the question.
Yeah, no, I think I could not agree more with what Anna and Sam said about the challenges of starting a program in pediatric oncology. I just want to just give a sort of view of my vision, because I came to this world as a parent, so basically, and but also a parent that has been working in drug discovery and development for many years, and that was witnessing basically similar situations. So for other diseases, rare diseases, I could see more initiatives. So for example, I was working for a company, a drug discovery company. We had a big collaboration with the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. So I was very familiar with the venture philanthropy model. So to me, the question was, why this is not happening in pediatric oncology? So we have all the resources there, the patients, the parents community, the clinicians. What's missing? And there are some, objective sort of scientific reasons. Oncology is more challenging. I would never use the word easy in drug discovery and development, only relatively speaking. But when you have a rare disease that is characterized by sort of by a single specific gene defect, it's much more the drug development is much more straightforward than when we are dealing with oncology, which is a systemic disease by definition. So clearly, there's a challenge of basically financial cost and financial return. But really, in my view, it was really the fact that somebody had to take the initiatives. Now you see here 3 companies here tonight, and ourselves, we started by the discussion with Ricardo and other parents, or a Spanish and Italian conjuring up to create a biotech company. In the case of YMABS, we had a parents. In the case of Day One, we had a pediatric oncologist, Sam. It was really a great passion for this. And sometimes you think you need somebody starting. So you need a snowball to start the avalanche. And
Right.
really hope that this is just the beginning of more and more companies coming to this field. And I agree with what Anna and Sam said. So there are many things that could facilitate this, and we could work together to facilitate this process.
I like that, a snowball to start the avalanche. That's good. With your permission, I'm going to start to use that phrase. I like it.
Feel free. I can tell you in Italian as well, so if you want.
Grazie. So let me try to pick up on that. In terms of partnerships, I mean, certainly my experience with my son and so many other parents here in the U.S. and around the world, our touch point really has been that academic health center, right? That COG institution or other institution that specializes in childhood cancer. So many of the trials are initiated by investigators and clinicians at these institutions. Can the panel just talk a little bit about the interaction with those partners, how that works, how it may be improved? I don't know, maybe it's perfect. I'm speaking from a place of ignorance here, but I think for parents that's so familiar, going to an institution that focuses on their particular tumor, and how you engage with those institutions, I think would be of interest. So I'll just throw that out there for anyone who wants to take it.
I'm happy to go ahead and get started. I mean, I think it's just in terms of helping folks understand the depth and complexity of those interactions. We work, and I'm sure Cesare and Anna work in a similar manner, but we work with academic institutions in a variety of different ways. For studies that Day One sponsors, that is where we're financially and legally responsible for the study from start to finish. Partnering with institutions as clinical trial sites for our study it's a fundamental part of what we do. Because pediatric cancer is thankfully rare. Oftentimes we need to work with large numbers of sites, and sometimes that may lead us to work with more organized networks, like in our case the Pacific Neuro-Oncology Consortium or COG or others. Sometimes we're grabbing sites from all around the world, but working with them in a coordinated manner is essential. At an individual investigator level, investigator-sponsored studies, that is where an investigator raises grant money, and sometimes from organizations such as the ones that are represented by CAC2, but needs the drug or the investigational agent for that study, we'll partner with them by providing knowledge, obviously by providing drug, by providing some guidance around safety or scientific design, and then really work with them as the data unspools, knowing that they're going to run the experiment at their pace, and then we're there to help answer questions or potentially seize upon opportunities afforded by signals to say, oh wow, you've taken our drug and you put it into a disease that we weren't thinking about, and you've seen some level of activity. What can we do next? How can we drive that research forward? But I'd say that in both of those instances, one of the things that's really essential in that partnership is really a back and forth dialogue. At the end of the day, even though we've got some pretty smart people at Day One, the vast majority of the expertise for the problems that we're trying to solve is located within the brains of the people at the academic institutions, and frankly, the physicians and scientists who are on the front lines of either doing the research or taking care of these patients. And we need to learn from them. We need to figure out ways to support them. Institutional funding is not unlimited, and clinical research operations at academic clinical trial sites is always underfunded. So, trying to be flexible, trying to find ways of making their lives easier, helping them get our studies up and running. And then, for investigator-sponsored trials, really being creative as they try to translate basic science discoveries into, signal finding or early stage research trials. So it's the best, frankly, the best part of my job is to get to interact with many people who used to be my former colleagues, share ideas, and find ways to solve problems.
And Sam, it would seem to me that so much of the work that CAC2 member organizations do in supporting research is complementary, right? Finding opportunities to support individual investigators or team scientists who are working on that basic research that's hopefully going to lead to some sort of translation into the clinic. So it seems like there's a synergy there, which is nice.
And absolutely. I mean, our lead program, by the way, just incidentally, our lead program, the reason that we saw it as a valuable program is because of work that was funded by the Pediatric Low-Grade Astrocytoma Foundation, which has now become part of the Pediatric Brain Tumor Foundation. But everything that we built, the initial work going years back prior to the formation of Day One, was funded by parents of children with low-grade gliomas. So, it's proof positive that the research that CAC2 member organizations fund can actually translate forward into a drug development program and hopefully into something that will, have the potential to change the way that children are cared for in the future.
Yeah, terrific. Anna, speaking of connections, I know that Y-MABS is directly connected with our friends at Sloan Kettering, who my wife and I know so well from Evan's treatment. So maybe this is a good opportunity to talk just a little bit about that partnership.
Sure. I think partnering with academic institutions are critically important for many different reasons. One of them, because a lot of development is happening at academic institutions from the molecule perspective, and then transitioning into the pharma industry from a licensing perspective. There are a number of such examples, not just Y-MAB Therapeutics and MSK, but also working with individual investigators, not just institutions, right? Someone who has a brilliant idea. I think the challenge comes, how do we support that? How do we make sure that their research interests, individual or institutional, aligns with a pharmaceutical or biotechnology company? And how do we marry those two from us supporting them, or if we are running a clinical trial, they being interested in our research and development? And in pediatrics, there's only so many patients to go around. How do we ensure that we don't compete for the same patient population, that we work collaboratively on clinical trials with one goal in mind, right? And it's not just about the COG. I mean, COG is actually partnering with SciPen in Europe, that also a large pediatric cooperative group looking into cancer understanding and development of therapeutic agents. But also there is a lot of small consortiums around the globe, and specifically in the US, that compete for the same patient population, right? So I think that's where CAC2 and other organizations can help us bring these entities together to the table and say, how do we ensure that we all working together toward one common goal, where we pool resources together and we don't compete for patients? Because I think at the end of the day, the clinical trial should be done faster, and bringing the therapy to the patient as fast as we can should be another goal of everyone, whether it's industry or pharma or foundational organization.
Absolutely, without question. Cesare, do you have any thoughts here that you want to add to the discussion?
Well, I would definitely like to say that probably the most enjoyable part of my work is really the discussion and interactions with the members of our scientific advisory board, with the clinical community. We really based most of our work, or if not all our work, on the science that is generated in academia and that has been published by pediatric oncologists over the years. Really, we are driven by science, and so one question that I often ask members of our scientific advisory board or clinicians in general. So, what are the needs? What are the drugs that need to be developed? So, for that particular disease, what's the most promising? agent that you see around. So if we had $100 million, where we should place our bet, what should we be doing? So because we as a company have a strong experience in drug development, we have people coming from pharma industry, biotech industry with regulatory affairs experience, clinical development. But what we really need is really this interaction with the pediatric oncology community. And so we have this constant dialogue, and it's been really uplifting, and it's really driving our operations. And then of course the patients community, the parents community, this is really essential for a company like us. We see ourselves intimately part of this community. We are mission driven, and that's more important because our model is more challenging, if you like, from the financial point of view, because we're really committed at focusing our efforts only on pediatric oncology efforts and indications. So we may consider partnering with another company for adult oncology indications, adult oncology drug development, but we want to be very focused on childhood cancer. And that's more challenging from the financial point of view. But we've seen tremendous support. We received a tremendous support from CAC2 members and other foundations. We had 10 foundations supporting us in one way or another. So it's really dependent on this.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you all for those great insights. Let's move on to the next question. I think this one kind of looks back a little bit and looks forward a little bit as well, which is nice. Let me just preface it by saying I think everybody knows that the CAC2 community, we were all aggressive advocates for the Creating Hope Act and the RACE Act, right? And these are two landmark bills that are designed to incentivize and grow the pediatric cancer drug development space. And I'm just curious if the panel has any thoughts on the impact of these two laws so far. And if not, maybe another way to come at this issue is just to share any perspectives that you might have on additional regulatory reforms or incentive programs that might help spur investment and activity in the space. So I'm going to throw it open to anyone who wants to jump in.
Yeah, I think the Creating Hope Act and providing the priority review voucher program has facilitated, clinical drug development in pediatric cancer. I'm sure we can improve on that. I know that the reauthorization has happened in 2019, and that definitely helps to have this type of a program supporting drug development. I can't speak to the RACE Act, what impact it has. I know what effect it had, but I can't really speak to that. Maybe someone else can speak to the details if they have any examples, but I do know that it has changed the paradigm of cancer drug development as well for molecularly targeted therapies, specifically in pediatric cancer.
Yeah, I would agree with what Anna said. I think on the RACE Act, it is probably early, right? The implementation was not even a year ago, so it's not quite clear, and the FDA has not really described any metrics or quantitative data coming out of this. I can tell you, anecdotally, that amongst my colleagues in clinical development and small biotech, I am hearing from people who are calling to ask me questions about operationalizing their now regulatory obligations to do pediatric development, which is now they're obligated to do, even though that wasn't necessarily part of their plan. And I think there's going to be a lot more to come, but I think it's going to take another year or 2 or 3 to really understand the full impact. With regard to Creating Hope, and again, I think everybody should stop and just marvel at the force of nature that is Nancy Goodman and her ability to continue to push through a reauthorization during one of the most contentious political periods in United States history, that she was able to get the temporary reauthorization for the Creating Hope Act. I do think that does make a difference. Certainly in the conversations that we have, we do frequently hear when we go out and talk to people questions about, is a program that we have or something that we're going to do, going to put us in a position to be eligible for a priority review voucher. So the people who are making investments in this space are aware of the upside that would come from the successful acquisition and subsequent sale of a voucher, and they do value that. And I think that as they think about investing in programs that could be developed in childhood cancers, they see that as a net positive, and that's going to help us all in terms of getting more capital flowing into the development of pediatric therapeutics.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on the priority review voucher topic, which is definitely a positive element. So clearly, it's creating interesting incentives. However, there are a couple of problems with that. One is that it's not yet permanent, which is really creates a sort of an idea of sort of uncertainty about the future. And then obviously there is uncertainty as to the value of the priority review voucher. That's, when you sell the voucher, what will be the value, which is essentially determined how many vouchers will be around at any given time. And of course, I don't really have an answer to these questions, but clearly it's something positive, and we want to be in a position to take advantage of this. The only difference is that we don't want to base our strategy only too much around the voucher, specifically for this uncertainty around the future. I have something interesting to say from our perspective regarding the RACE Act, that we, I believe as a result of the RACE Act, we started a number of interesting conversations with several biotech companies, so interested in collaboration, in a co-development type of agreement. Actually, we are negotiating right now a very interesting collaboration with a biotech company. I kind of be more detailed at this point in time, but I can see, at least from our perspective, for a company really focused on pediatric oncology, drug development, there are more opportunities for co-development partnership with companies. We just have to be a bit more creative, and sort of very flexible in the business model. I agree that it's still early days, but we're having some interesting conversation with a number of companies. So I'm really looking forward to see how we can develop these into true partnerships.
Thank you for that. I've got maybe an interesting observation as well. It's not apples to apples, obviously, but I think about our experience in the pandemic, right? And over a year ago, we had this just disaster unfold worldwide that in many places is still unfolding. And there were here in the US and other places this immediate prioritization of resources to fix this problem, right? And there was a marshaling of resources and activity by industry. And here we are, a year later, and you see what the result of that is. You see the result of people prioritizing a problem, investing in it, incentivizing it, all with the desire to have a positive outcome. And, I see a little bit of this with our community, right? In the past few years with some of these pieces of legislation that we've been talking about. The investment clearly is nowhere near what has gone into COVID-19 and vaccines, but I hope you take my point that sometimes I think I can speak for myself personally, it does get a little bit depressing when you think about, the lack of therapies for kids over the decades now, these kids who are taking adult therapies, adult chemos, and there's just nothing new for them. And as I watched the pandemic play out, I thought, this is just exhibit A as to what, this industry can accomplish if given the resources and again, the prioritization. So our job here, I think at CAC2 is to continue that momentum. And maybe that's a good segue into the third question that I have. And that is exactly that. How can CAC2 member organizations help you all take the next step? What is the role we can play in fostering the development of new and less toxic therapies for kids, whether that's advocacy or partnership in funding or clinical trial recruitment? We're interested in your thoughts on that because we want to help. So I'll throw it out to the panel, whoever wants to jump in.
I can probably start. So one thing I've noticed in pediatric cancers that have been lacking is that there are no registries to sort of support the real world data. And also the tumor tissue banks probably reside within the cooperative groups or institutions, and access to both the real world data through registries and tissue banks, I think, is critically important if we want to develop the products further, right? So how do we facilitate that in the pediatric community between, again, academic institutions, advocacy groups, and pharmaceutical industries to allow for that further development? I mean, tissue is the issue, right? So it's critically important to have that if we are to get into the new drug targets and registry, just to understand what is really happening in the real world. I don't know if Sam or Cesaro has any other thoughts on that.
I will tell you, Anna, in one of the breakout rooms before this came up exactly. So there are two things that, Gavin, I think about here. So one is infrastructure building within the pediatric oncology research space. And I really think about this as a bang for your buck. If the goal of many of the CAC2 member organizations is to facilitate the development of new therapeutics, then, for any given amount of money that they have to invest in research or some type of research directed activity, where is the most value going to come from? And believe it or not, I really think it's in the big research infrastructure and bio repositories. And I think, as Anna noted, and this is something that I know is very important to YMAP's strategy, is centralized data registries that are available, because at the end of the day, our ability to go to a regulatory authority with a small, fast trial and say, we believe that this represents an improvement over standard of care in terms of activity and safety, means being able to also say to that regulator, and this is what standard of care results in. And if you don't have that data to point to in a way that an FDA or EMA is going to, say, yes, I see your point. You are clearly better, and you provided me X number of patients worth of real world data to substantiate that point. If we don't have that, it makes it really hard sometimes for us to make that argument. And data gathering, data sharing doesn't have the same sort of wow factor as, some new mouse model or some new cell line, but it is vitally important and something that can be used by multiple companies, both small and large. So that's one thing. The second, I think, is really, a way to partner is to, stay in touch. Anna's company, Cesari's company, our company, we built these really to try to be conduits for the ideas that are coming out of academic pediatric oncology research, where we've assembled the expertise to be able to take the next steps and try to translate those findings into programs, be it through the creation of new biologics like Anna does, or through the in-licensing of existing products and retargeting them towards pediatric cancers, the same model that Cesari and our organization share. But those ideas and observations on how to do that, what problems we want to try to, apply our specific talents to, those ideas are going to come in a large part from the pediatric oncology research community that the CAC2 organizations are funding. So I get that your grantees to recognize that we've built these organizations to take the next step once they found it. Using this drug in this disease is potentially beneficial. We're here to help try to turn that idea into a product and a development program.
Yeah, this is exactly spot on, Sam, and I want to say exactly the same. So in addition to the great support we got from foundations of financial support at the critical stage of our company, this is really crucial. So the CAC2 organizations and many foundations supported really cutting edge research over the years, and out of this research there may be very interesting drug discovery and drug development opportunities, and I think it's really a dialogue that we can have with these organizations to understand what they've supported, what kind of line of research, and can we get involved with this project, and basically out of these research project, academic project, build a drug development project. So it's something that we encourage from foundations, to come forward if they have some ideas. This happened in the past, and it's possible this will translate into new drug development programs later. But this constant dialogue, it's really crucial for us.
I have to say, Cesari, when you say the similar thing that I say, but you say it with an Italian accent, it automatically sounds like 10 times better. So I thank you for that.
No, it's like I can also smile.
Yeah, that really
totally
is unfair. Go ahead, Anna.
Sorry,